At a family dinner, my son's wife told me to sit at the children's table in front of her friends. She laughed and said, "We're just keeping the vibe classy in the main room." I didn't argue. I moved quietly. But later that night, I canceled her biggest brand deal, the one that ran directly through my company. Before I share exactly what happened and how it all unfolded, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment below where you're watching from. I'd love to know. My name is Margaret Cole, and I am 58 years old. For most of my life, I've worked hard to build something lasting. After my husband passed away, I poured everything into raising my 2 children, Ryan and Julia, while also growing a marketing agency from the ground up. It wasn't easy, but every late night and every sacrifice eventually paid off. The company now works with brands across the country, and I'm proud that my children have seen the value of determination and dignity. Ryan is my oldest, 33, a brilliant software developer with a quiet personality. He is kind and hardworking, but he avoids conflict whenever he can. His wife, Vanessa, is different. She is ambitious, always chasing the spotlight. She built a career as a lifestyle influencer and craves attention from her followers. Where Ryan is gentle, Vanessa is loud. Where I value humility, she values image. My daughter Julia is 26 and still in graduate school. She is fiercely protective of me, often stepping in when she sees me brushed aside. She has never hidden her dislike for Vanessa, though I've always tried to encourage peace. Over the past few years, I noticed Vanessa's attitude toward me shift from polite to dismissive. She would roll her eyes if I spoke about traditions, call my clothes old-fashioned, or cut me off when I offered advice. More than once, she made little comments that stung, but I stayed quiet. I told myself it was better to keep the peace for Ryan's sake than to fight over every insult. When Ryan earned a promotion at work, I wanted to celebrate him. I booked a private dining space at a restaurant, invited family, and made sure it was a night to remember. I thought it might also be a chance to finally connect with Vanessa on better terms. I hoped that with her friends present, she would show a little more respect. Julia noticed my optimism. "Mom, you don't have to keep trying so hard with her," she said. "She doesn't appreciate you." I smiled and shook my head. She's Ryan's wife. If keeping the peace makes his life easier, then that's what matters. I believed that, but deep inside, a part of me worried. I had seen enough small slights from Vanessa to know she didn't value me the way I valued family. Still, I walked into that dinner hopeful. I dressed in my best outfit, ready to celebrate my son and enjoy a night surrounded by family. I couldn't have known that before the appetizers even arrived. Vanessa would make sure to humiliate me in front of everyone. The evening of the dinner arrived, and I felt a flutter of nerves as I entered the restaurant. I had chosen a soft navy dress, simple but elegant, one that Richard used to say made me look confident. Julia walked beside me, carrying a small gift bag for Ryan. The private dining space glowed with warm lights, the table decorated with fresh flowers and polished silverware. I had spared no expense because I wanted this to be a moment of joy for Ryan. As we walked in, I saw Ryan already seated with Vanessa at the main table. Around them sat a few of Vanessa's friends, women I barely knew, but who followed her online. They looked polished, laughing loudly as they snapped photos of their cocktails. Ryan smiled when he saw me, but Vanessa's expression was more like someone tolerating an unexpected guest than welcoming family. I walked toward the main table with Julia, expecting to take a seat near Ryan, but before I could pull out a chair, Vanessa spoke up in a loud, clear voice that carried across the room. "Oh, Margaret," she said with a bright smile, though her tone was sharp. "Why don't you sit at the children's table? We're just keeping the vibe classy in the main room." For a second, I thought I had misheard. My heart skipped, and I glanced around the table. Her friends giggled, exchanging looks. One of them covered her mouth, as if embarrassed, but none of them spoke up. Ryan froze, his eyes darting from me to Vanessa. He didn't say a word. Julia stiffened beside me. "Excuse me," she said sharply, glaring at Vanessa. Vanessa chuckled, waving her hand as if brushing it off. "Relax, Julia. It's just for fun. We want the main table to feel elegant for the pictures. Margaret won't mind sitting with the kids." Her words cut deep. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks. I had spent weeks planning this dinner, arranging every detail, and here I was being dismissed like an afterthought in front of strangers. The children's table was tucked into the corner, where my younger nieces and nephews were already eating and laughing over crayons and puzzles. Julia leaned close to me, whispering angrily, "Mom, don't you dare." But I knew what I had to do. I could argue, I could make a scene, but that would only give Vanessa more satisfaction. Instead, I forced a small smile, nodded, and quietly walked to the children's table. My heels clicked softly on the floor as the laughter from the main table swelled behind me. The children cheered when they saw me, innocent and happy to have me near. "Aunt Margaret, sit next to me," one of my nephews shouted. Their joy softened the sting, but I still felt the weight of humiliation pressing on my chest. I smiled at them, cut their chicken into smaller bites, and listened to their chatter, all while hearing the toasts and laughter from the main table just a few feet away. Every so often, I glanced toward Ryan. He avoided my eyes. He raised his glass when Vanessa's friends clinked theirs, but he never once spoke up for me. That silence hurt even more than Vanessa's words. I thought back to the years I had spent supporting him, paying for his schooling, guiding him through tough times. I had pictured celebrating his success as a proud mother, not as a woman pushed into the corner like she didn't belong. Julia fumed at the children's table. "This is unbelievable," she muttered under her breath. "She's humiliating you in front of everyone, and Ryan is just sitting there." I laid a hand gently on hers. "Let it go," I whispered. Sometimes silence is stronger than shouting. But inside, my heart was breaking. I could feel the weight of every slight Vanessa had ever thrown my way, now magnified by the laughter of her friends. She had turned what should have been a night of family celebration into a public display of disrespect. As dessert arrived, Vanessa made another remark that echoed in my ears. "Make sure you get a shot of the main table," she told one of her friends holding a camera. "We want it to look classy." She didn't glance at me once. I smiled at the children and helped pass them slices of cake, but in my mind a quiet storm was forming. I didn't need to argue with her in that moment. I didn't need to raise my voice or defend myself. I had something far more powerful, knowledge. Vanessa had no idea that the brand deal she bragged about so often, the one that paid for her glamorous lifestyle, ran directly through my agency. She had no idea that with one decision, I could end it. And as I sat at the children's table, cutting cake and laughing with my nieces and nephews, I realized that was exactly what I would do. That night, after the dinner ended, I drove home in silence. Julia sat beside me, fuming, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. The headlights of the passing cars lit up her face in flashes, and I could see the anger burning in her eyes. "Mom, I can't believe you let her talk to you like that," she finally burst out. "You're the one who organized that entire dinner. You paid for the space, the food, the flowers, and she humiliated you in front of her friends. Ryan didn't even defend you." Her words hit hard, but I kept my voice steady. "Julia, I didn't let her win. Sometimes walking away quietly says more than shouting ever could." Julia shook her head. "You're too nice, Mom. She's never going to respect you." I didn't answer, but inside my mind was already moving in a different direction. The pain of that night wasn't going to disappear, but I wasn't about to let it sit there as just pain. I knew something Vanessa didn't know, and I realized it was time to remind her that disrespect comes with consequences. For months, my agency had been handling Vanessa's biggest brand deal. She had begged Ryan to convince me to connect her with our team, and I had agreed, hoping it might build a bridge between us. It was a major contract with a national lifestyle brand, the kind of partnership that gave her the credibility she flaunted online. She often bragged about it at family gatherings, claiming it proved how valuable she was in the influencer world. She had no idea how much control I still held over that deal. Every brand partnership we signed ran through a series of clauses, including one that allowed us to cancel if the client's behavior damaged the brand's image. At the time, I thought it was just standard language that would never matter. But after the dinner, when my niece sent me a short video she had recorded of Vanessa loudly mocking me at the restaurant, I saw it differently. The video captured Vanessa's voice saying, "We're keeping the vibe classy in the main room," while laughter followed. I sat in my office with my laptop open, replaying the clip again and again. My hands trembled, not with sadness anymore, but with resolve. Vanessa wanted to act like I was beneath her. She wanted to use my company's connections to build her career while tearing me down in front of strangers. That imbalance couldn't continue. Julia peeked into the room and saw me watching the video. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Reviewing her contract," I replied firmly. Julia's eyes widened. "Mom, are you going to cancel it?" I looked at her, my jaw set. I gave her an opportunity out of kindness. Tonight, she showed me what she thinks of me. If she can't respect me as her mother-in-law, she will at least learn to respect the hand that fed her career. I pulled out the contract and scanned every page. The professionalism clause was right there in black and white. Any public behavior that reflected poorly on the brand was grounds for termination. Vanessa mocking her mother-in-law at a family dinner wasn't just rude. It was public, recorded, and tied directly to her reputation. For a moment, I hesitated. Part of me wondered if I was being too harsh. But then I remembered her laughter, the way she smiled at her friends while pushing me toward the children's table, and the way Ryan had sat silently while it happened. My dignity mattered. My years of hard work mattered. And if Vanessa thought she could build her empire on my back while stepping on me, she was about to learn differently. I drafted the termination letter carefully, choosing each word with precision. It wasn't emotional. It was professional, citing the clause and the evidence of conduct damaging to the brand's image. I scheduled it to be sent to both her manager and the brand first thing in the morning. When I closed my laptop, Julia exhaled in relief. "Mom, I've never been more proud of you. You didn't yell, you didn't stoop to her level. You just let your strength speak." I smiled faintly. Respect doesn't always come from raising your voice. Sometimes it comes from reminding people where the real power lies. That night, I lay in bed with my heart still heavy from the humiliation. But for the first time in years, I felt a deep calm. Vanessa thought she had won when she laughed at me across that restaurant, but she had no idea that the real victory was just beginning, and it would come without me raising my voice at all. The next morning, sunlight poured through my curtains as if the world itself had been washed clean. I made my coffee slowly, the rich smell filling the kitchen, and sat down at the same table where Richard and I had once planned our lives. My laptop was already open, the termination letter queued and ready. With one steady breath, I clicked send. The message shot across the internet to Vanessa's manager and the brand she had been working with. My part was done. I went about my day as usual, reviewing client reports and answering emails. But around mid-morning, my phone began to buzz non-stop. First came a frantic text from Ryan. "Mom, call me. It's urgent." Then another. "Vanessa's contract. What happened?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let him sit with the same silence he had given me the night before at the dinner table. It wasn't until the third call came through that I finally picked up. "Mom," Ryan blurted out, his voice tight with panic. "Vanessa just got an email saying her deal was cancelled. They said it came directly from your company. Did you do this?" I sipped my coffee before answering. "Yes, Ryan, I did." The contract had a professionalism clause, and her behavior last night was not professional. I don't run a company that rewards people for publicly humiliating others, least of all me. There was a long pause on the other end. I imagined Ryan sitting there, torn between defending his wife and realizing the truth he could no longer ignore. Finally, he whispered, "She's devastated, Mom. This deal was everything to her." I let his words sink in before replying calmly. "And I was everything to you, Ryan. Or at least I thought I was. I gave her an opportunity out of kindness. She repaid me with disrespect in front of family and strangers. Actions have consequences. She needed to learn that." In the background, I could hear Vanessa shouting, her voice shrill with anger. "Tell her to fix it. She can't do this to me. She owes me. Ryan tried to cover the receiver, but her words carried through. I closed my eyes and shook my head. You tell her, I said firmly. I don't owe her anything. Then I ended the call. By the afternoon, the fallout had spread. Vanessa's social media followers noticed she had suddenly gone silent about the brand she had been promoting for months. Some even began asking questions, leaving comments on her posts. What happened to the campaign? Why was it pulled? Her silence only fueled the speculation. Meanwhile, my phone lit up with messages from relatives who had been at the dinner. One of my nieces had posted the short clip of Vanessa mocking me on her private account, and it circulated quickly through the family. Everyone now understood what had happened the night before, and why I had chosen to act. My brother David called me, his tone full of admiration. Margaret, you didn't just sit there and take it. You let her embarrass herself with her own actions. That was brilliant. Even Julia, who had been so furious the night before, couldn't stop smiling. Mom, she thought she had all the power, and you showed her where it really was. Without yelling, without stooping, just pure strength. Later that evening, Ryan showed up at my house. He looked tired, his tie loosened, his expression heavy with guilt. He sat at the kitchen table across from me, the same place where I had clicked send that morning. Mom, he began quietly, Vanessa is furious. She says you ruined her career. I met his eyes steadily. I didn't ruin her career, Ryan. She ruined it herself when she decided humiliating me was entertainment. I simply refused to keep supporting that behavior. He ran a hand through his hair, looking younger than his 33 years. I should have stopped her last night. I should have spoken up. Yes, I said simply. You should have. The weight of my words lingered between us. He lowered his head, ashamed. I'm sorry. I softened, because despite my anger, this was still my son. Ryan, I didn't do this to hurt you. I did this because respect is non-negotiable. Your wife needs to learn that, and so do you. For once, he didn't argue. He just nodded. Back at their home, I knew Vanessa was spiraling. Her carefully curated image had cracked. The friends who had laughed at her joke the night before weren't there to bail her out now. The brand had cut ties, her manager was furious, and her followers were left with unanswered questions. The empire she thought she was building had been shaken because she forgot the simplest rule. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. That night, as I sat in my living room with the quiet hum of the clock in the background, I felt no gloating or triumph. What I felt was peace. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't created a scene, but I had stood up for myself in the only way that truly mattered. Vanessa wanted me at the children's table. Instead, she found herself without a seat at the table of her own career. The days after the dinner and the cancelled contract were strangely quiet. I went back to my usual routine, walking through my garden in the mornings, reviewing projects at the agency and meeting with clients. But beneath that calm, I knew things had shifted. The silence that followed Vanessa's humiliation was louder than any argument we might have had at the table. Word traveled quickly through the family. My niece's short video of Vanessa mocking me at the dinner had circulated among relatives. For years, I had kept my head down, letting small insults slide. But this time, people saw the truth for themselves. My phone buzzed with messages. Some were shocked at how boldly she had disrespected me, while others congratulated me for handling it with such quiet strength. My brother David called one evening and said, Margaret, you didn't need to raise your voice. You let her hang herself with her own words. That's the kind of power that lasts. Julia, who had been outraged the night of the dinner, walked into my office one afternoon with a smile I hadn't seen in a while. Mom, you taught me something I'll never forget, she said. I always thought standing up for yourself meant yelling or fighting. But you proved that sometimes silence and decisive action can be even louder. You didn't argue with Vanessa. You just reminded her who she was dealing with. I hugged her tightly, feeling a swell of pride. Respect, I told her, isn't something you beg for. It's something you demand by the way you carry yourself. And when people cross that line, you don't have to match their cruelty. You just show them the cost of disrespect. Ryan didn't call for a few days, but when he finally came by, his face was pale, his shoulders heavy. He sat at the kitchen table like he had the night of the cancellation, staring down at his hands. "Mom," he began, his voice low. "Vanessa hasn't been herself since this happened. She's angry, embarrassed, and she's blaming everyone but herself. I don't even know how to talk to her anymore." I listened quietly, letting him sit with his guilt. Finally, I said, "Ryan, I don't enjoy watching your marriage struggle, but you need to understand something. Love without respect will never survive. You stood silent while your wife mocked me in public. That silence gave her permission, and in the end, it cost her more than she expected." He looked up at me, eyes clouded with shame. "You're right. I should have spoken up. I should have protected you. The apology was late, but it mattered." I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. "I raised you to be kind, but also strong. Don't let someone else's voice replace your own. If you don't stand for your family, you'll find yourself standing alone." Ryan nodded slowly. I could see the weight of my words sinking in, not just for me, but for his future with Vanessa. Whether she learned her lesson or not, he now knew that silence had consequences. As for Vanessa, she avoided me completely. She skipped family gatherings, stayed off social media for weeks, and refused to speak to me directly. From what I heard through Ryan, her manager had dropped her, and brands were hesitant to work with her after the incident. Her once booming influencer career was suddenly on shaky ground. She had built her image on class and elegance, but the story of her mocking her own mother-in-law spread quietly through the same circles she had once courted. I didn't feel joy in her downfall, but I also didn't feel guilt. Actions have consequences. She needed to learn that kindness is not weakness, and respect is not optional. One evening, as I sat on the porch with Julia, watching the sunset, she asked me if I regretted it. "Not for a second," I replied. I sat at the children's table that night, but only because I chose to hold my dignity above her insults. In the end, she's the one who learned what it means to be treated like a child, and I didn't need to raise my voice to teach that lesson. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful, filled with the kind of clarity that only comes after a storm. The lesson I took from it all was simple. Never let anyone convince you that you are less than you are. Family, friends, or strangers, respect is non-negotiable. If someone tries to humiliate you, remember that you don't always have to fight with words. Sometimes the most powerful response is quiet action that speaks for itself. That night at the restaurant, Vanessa thought she had put me in my place, but in the end, it was me who reminded her of hers. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe to my channel and comment below where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your thoughts.